Well, welcome to another creative podcast. There's a bit of a swishing noise in the back because, we've had British summer arrive for a couple of days when it's been ridiculously hot, and then the rest of the British summer, which are thunderstorms now. So everything is a bit hot and humid. So unfortunately, I've got a fan on. So with that in mind, I'm going to be interviewing Barry Kitchen, who I've known for a number of years. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Vic.
Probably best really just to ask you how you would explain what you do first, and then I'm going to we'll go into the normal thing of quizzing you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I sort of do a range of things. Teaching is probably main job. Examining, gigging, recording, anything really.
Yeah. So you've got quite a diverse sort of portfolio, haven't you?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how it all started off. How did you get involved playing the guitar?
I used to have a friend I was staying with when I was in my probably very early teens, and he decided he wants to learn the guitar. We was both into the normal sort of stuff, Black Sabbath, Kiss, that sort of stuff. He was having lessons, and I just used to pick up his guitar and just try and copy what he'd learned, and it's really...
Yeah. Did you find that you were actually better than he was?
Yeah.
It's funny actually, because I had a very similar experience when I was at school.
Oh, yeah.
Weirdly, because I had a friend. We used to call him Rory. I can't even remember his original name now, but that would have been after Rory Gallagher.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we was into him as well.
Yeah, Rory. I can't even remember his original name. Anyway, doesn't matter too much. But he had this really nice sort of black copy, obviously, because nobody had any money really. I think it might have been a Columbus Les Paul or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was one of those sort of things you thought, oh my god, that's really good. And he started playing guitar, and and it was like he sort of picked up what he was doing, and in no time it was like he was being left behind, poor guy. But yeah, so it's
Similar scenario.
yeah, very similar. So once you started playing, what really got you? You obviously realised you're quite good, and then
I just think that I always really loved music. I mean, the first thing that really sort of turned me onto it was hearing Freebird.
yeah,
And that's it, just like the light bulb coming.
yeah.
And then I say with my friend taking up, so I did play in a band with later, although he quit quite a few years ago. I just started on like a nylon strung classical, then we had a black K Les Paul.
Yeah.
I just used to start playing, Sabbath riffs, AC/DC, that sort of thing, and then just started playing in bands.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
Sort of went off from there. Really.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, although I'm a bit older than you,
Only a bit.
well, but there's this interesting sort of trajectory, which is really you just got on and did it.
Yeah.
I had some mates who were in the sort of punk bands in the punk period, and it was literally like, I remember one of my friends who was in a band with later, who was a bass player, and he went and saw a band at his local pub, and he saw this guy, and he thought, I could do that. It was literally like, and I can remember actually listening to some friends of mine who are older, from the sort of 60s, 1960s thing, and it was the same attitude, like, there's 3 chords, I mean, come on, and that was it, and it wasn't there was anything difficult, or you never perceived that it was difficult at the time, if you see what I mean, because intrinsically it seemed actually quite straightforward that you could do it. Whereas now, of course, I think a lot of kids got it in their head that you've got to be some sort of expert or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was more natural, and it was in those days.
I think so. I think that's what it was, and again, that's something I wanted to sort of explore a little bit. And this is why I'm doing these things like these podcasts, in order to make people realise that actually you could do that. So you started playing in bands. What sort of venues and what have you?
Well, I mean, the early ones were just youth clubs and things like that, really. When I was young, village halls, that sort of thing. And then obviously as I got older, it was pubs and Since then, it's been pretty much everything. Yes.
Yeah. So were you just doing your own stuff or covers?
Mainly covers in the early stages. I played in a couple of originals bands. One of them, ironically, was just had a best of album released on iTunes today, actually.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay. That's
that's
really
a
good.
signed band I was in the 90s.
Well, there we are, you see.
It was perfect, yeah.
Yeah, no. See, I mastermind these things, I don't know. So what were they called? Good name.
Yeah. I can't take
Got credit for the
credit
name?
for the name,
No. No.
But yeah, so something is funny with something like that, something I'd sort of forgotten about that sort of happened years ago. Suddenly, some people have got interested in it and want to release this best of album.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? So presumably this is sort of Medway area, is it?
Yeah, I mean that band was mainly based in Sheerness.
Right. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So
Now, for anybody who's listening to this outside of the realm of the Medway towns, Sheerness is another place completely, isn't it?
yes.
So, although on the map it doesn't, because if it's that far away, it's just a completely different place. It's like another planet.
It is another planet. Yeah.
But there's a lot of places to play in the sort of Medway area and in that part of Kent. Because when it comes to places like Greece and done the examining, the thing is you realise that they've got nowhere to play. These amazing players. They've got nowhere to play. Yeah. And then you sort of think, oh my goodness, we've been absolutely spoiled for that, because you could literally just turn up anywhere and play, couldn't you? Yeah. Really, and I think that's quite an interesting thing that we sort of overlook here.
Take for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, most places, as long as you can twist their arm long enough, will take a band. Depending on what you want from the point of view of money, but it's not a case of you can't do that, because it's just we don't have that sort of thing here, type of thing. I mean, generally, it's not much of an issue.
No, not
okay, you might think about noise, but it's not like, well, I'm sorry, we only have bouzouki players here, type of thing. you know what I mean? We're really sport for choice.
Yeah.
So, how did that sort of come then? The band that you had, the sign band that.
Oh yeah, I was in a band and we saw an advert. Obviously, what they'd been doing as they started to get big, a few of the members pulled out. So 3 of my band, we went along and just auditioned. Keyboard player, myself playing guitar, and a bass player. So
you all got in?
So we all got in.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. That's quite unusual, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really. Yeah. It's but yeah, it all worked out. All worked out well.
Yeah, it's good. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm quite intrigued by this, because, again, this is one of those sort of things, when you look at it, it's like, well, you couldn't plan that. Could you? You couldn't actually plan to go and audition for a particular band and 3 of your band members get in.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, obviously the only one that didn't get in, they didn't need a drummer. So our drummer that we had, he sort of got left by the wayside.
Oh yeah, okay.
But it was always one casualty. They didn't need a drummer, So it was just purely just something that happened.
Yeah.
Just somebody saw the advert or word of mouth.
Yeah. I do find that interesting, because it's because I've spoken to you about this sort of thing before, but that's sort of what we look at as sort of chance, because we all sort of nowadays sort of go, but this is something I hear quite a lot, actually, that there's some weird coincidence that happens, which is the break, which actually makes that thing happen.
Yeah. And
that is the thing that you can't plan for it. You can set it up in a way, like you go out and meet a load of people and keep your contacts open. But it is that sort of weird, unconventional synchronicity type of thing.
Where,
yeah, I call it luck. People hate it because I find people get very uncomfortable with it. But I like to think of it as like a sort of container term, which is all the things that we can't quite work out why that happened, but it just did, type of thing. And obviously you can make yourself more lucky by being more open to the possibility of things happening by just talking to people, So from that point of view, it's that sort of thing. But so when that happened then, and that and you obviously things started to happen with that. You obviously did some recordings.
Yeah.
How many albums did you do?
There's going to be actually I think about 5 released over the next few years. But I mean, when I was with the band, it was just 2.
Right. So you had a lot of.
Well, they had a lot of stuff before that's been
Right.
remastered.
Right. Cool. That's amazing.
So,
It's really good. So, and then what happened?
well, the normal thing we
Musical differences, don't tell me.
no, it wasn't
No,
so
it's
much just done the normal thing. Went out playing all the clubs in London.
Yeah.
And I just think that the music was very 80s sounding. It was in the early 90s, and pushing it further on. I mean, you had Nirvana coming out, Oasis, and that. What we was doing just wasn't. And the drummer got 2 girls pregnant at the same time. Different girls.
So obviously not the rhythm method. No.
And it just, I remember we was playing in a.
At the same time.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it was conceived at the same time. I hope not.
Because that would be pretty amazing. I can't imagine how that could possibly work.
Yeah, it was quite lad. But no, I remember just going out and doing this, pushing the band for so long, and we kept getting asked to write songs for different artists, songs that they didn't want, and did spend a lot of time doing that. And I think it was one. I think I was down in Margate one day, just playing in a rock club, and snow was hammering down. There was lugging 4x12s in the back of the car, and the rhythm guitarist said to me, "I don't want to do this anymore."
Right. That's a weird coincidence to have snow in Margate.
Well, it was somewhere like that there.
Yeah, but that's really sort of
yeah.
You know, and it was like, well, that's the end of that. You know.
Yeah, and it was it just sort of just stopped, and so it was only a couple of weeks, sort of a month ago now, that I got this interest again, and so it was just by chance.
It's really weird, isn't it? So when was that? You said 90s.
I can't remember. It's got to be 94, 95, something like that.
Right, okay. So then you obviously sort of reassessed what was going on, and you decided what.
Yeah, I just carried on, sort of doing sort of carried on teaching. Went back to playing in covers bands.
So when did you start teaching?
When?
Because this is a big part of your work, isn't it?
Yeah, massive. I've been teaching, sort of bits and pieces ever since I can. Even back to when I lived with my mum and dad's.
Yeah. Because again, I think that's a similar situation to me. Because it starts off generally, doesn't it, with some mate saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you learn.
What's that you do?
Yeah.
So
you
give us
learn
five
how
and I'll
to
show
do
you.
it. You learn how to teach.
Yeah, you do.
Doing that,
Absolutely. So this is, I think, an interesting point, which I've not covered in any of these things. It's about actually teaching, because again, you examine for people wanting to get their teaching diploma, and it's quite interesting because obviously, when I don't do that anymore, but when I did that sort of idea that people can turn up and they haven't actually done any teaching yet, but they're doing their teaching diploma, and you go, okay, so how do you know how to teach if you've never done it? Because you actually do.
Oh, yeah.
You only really learn those skills by actually teaching, don't they?
Of course you do.
Yeah, but people have got this idea that they can't teach until they've got their teaching diploma.
Yeah.
It's just like, that boggles my mind, because it's like a completely different mindset.
It's a catch-22, isn't it?
Well, it is if you're coming from the point that you have to have a teaching diploma to teach. But of course, in the past there was no such thing as that. So
I suppose they could do a provisional, right?
Yeah, like you have an L plate up. So, but the point about it is you all those sort of subtle things that go on with teaching, which has got, actually it's nothing to do with teaching the musical instruments, about communication skills. Where are you going to learn that? By talking to people. Well, you're not going to learn that by doing a teaching diploma. These are things that are need to be there before you can. Somebody goes like, well, yeah, it's probably best not to do it that way because that, obviously doesn't help. I don't know what that is. Hitting people if they haven't got it right. I can't think really now. I mean, there's certain. Again, the biggest problems that people have are communication skills, aren't they, when they're teaching?
Yeah, I think that's at least 50% of it. If not more.
Yeah, probably all of it, isn't it? Really?
Well, yeah, certainly a sort of lion's share. That's what makes some people teach, and some people just find it's not for them. relating to different people and
Mm.
from all walks of life, as you
Mm.
know. It's you know, you're going from a builder to a doctor to an accountant, all different aspects of.
That's right.
It's how you get along with people, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, I've always thought with teaching, it's always finding where they are on the road, if you see what I mean,
yeah.
and then joining them at that point, but having some idea where they're going when they don't actually know where they're going, and that's the skill. It's not actually like, well, I'm up here, so try that. You know, which is what a lot of people do.
Oh, I know.
You know, it's this idea. Well, you know, I've got all the answers, so I'll, you know, but you don't engage with the person who's actually learning, because again, you know, they can't learn something unless they're at that point. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And again, that's a skill. It's a communication skill. It's not really to do with music per se. It's about actually meeting them where they are. So yeah, that's quite interesting. And as you say, you know, different people will be in different places, and it also doesn't necessarily, in my experience anyway, you know, when you get somebody on paper, like this guy's a doctor, you know, normally I look at that and think, oh my God, here we go, because they're normally so locked down in their belief in what they can do, and they're so locked into the sort of intellectual thing about stuff that you'd be better off with a builder. Nothing against builders, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
It's like, well, does this person actually, are they already defeating themselves at the beginning? You know, oh no, I've never been a, you know, but that's what I often get with people that have been through the whole educational thing. They've done their degree and all the rest, and they come out the other end, and really they're really locked down.
Yeah, as you know, music's not really like that. It's,
No,
I know
otherwise we wouldn't be doing it.
No, exactly, no, unconventional people.
Yeah, exactly.
But people nowadays do want to make it like that, you know.
Yes.
You know, but
And why is that, do you think?
I just think it's not just music, is it? I think it's just everything is compartmented.
Yeah, I think so.
Nowadays, isn't it? You know,
Absolutely.
There's no outside the box thing
No.
at all, is there?
No.
So
No.
everything's got to be in a straight line.
Yeah. Because, so, you know, that's always been my viewpoint about education generally, is that's what it does to people. You know, so right from the beginning, it's this idea, a sort of disempowerment thing that goes on with children. It's like, well, you don't know anything, which obviously they know a lot, because by the time they've got to school, they've learnt to read and write. Well, you know, write their name probably, but they've certainly learnt to walk and run and communicate. You know, they've got the language down, and they didn't go to school to do that. You know, they did that by observing and, you know, talking to their mum and dad and all the rest of it, and their friends and whatever. And then suddenly they go to school and no, they know nothing. It's like, you know, so where are the skills, you know, that they've obviously got? And it's almost like, well, no, we'll chuck that lot out the window. You know, you've got to sit down. I mean, for boys particularly, you know, they have to sit still. I mean, God, what a crazy thing to do for a boy. They're active, you know, and that's how their learning is. And girls, they don't have to do that. They can sit down because that's how they play. If you've got I don't know, 2 girls, no,
Boy and a girl.
boy and a girl. Well, you would
See both sides.
absolutely. So you would know how that works. I had girls, 4 girls, and they would sit round and play. You know, everything was there and it was all controlled and socially interactive. You know, Teddies were doing this and somebody's pouring the tea and all the rest of it. They weren't the teapot or the boy climbing up the wall or anything. You know, they were there and it was all social. So they worked very well in that early thing in schools where it's like they've got to sit down and talk. Fine, does them work, but for boys, they're a nightmare.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
you know, that's a bit of a sweeping statement, but you know, that's how it goes. And of course, I live near Brighton, so there's a lot of things where it's very difficult to work out what's going on anymore.
Yes,
so anyway, but you know, you can see what I'm saying as a general sort of thing. And so with your teaching, then obviously, because you've been doing this for such a long time, right? Really.
Yeah.
And you're only 21.
Nearly.
But you know, you obviously must be doing something right because you've got a lot of return business, haven't you?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Yeah, I think sometimes when you don't, it's like yourself. You don't set out to do anything. You just kind of get sort of dragged along with
Yeah.
it. And if you wasn't any good at it, you wouldn't be doing it.
No.
So it's, but as you say, I mean, a lot of it is communicating and getting on with. I mean, obviously you've got to be able to play as well, but it's most of it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoy teaching. It's not
Yeah.
a chore to me. I really
So do
like
I. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest problem is when it gets sort of confined within like a school environment. Then you start getting all the other nonsense that attaches to that. You know, about whatever it is you've got to wear this lanyard or tie or whatever the flavour of the month is, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And it's a bit. Then it starts to become a bit like, okay, this is not really. But it happens with everything, doesn't it? You know, because I was just talking to somebody who's in a very successful function band, and you know, he was saying to me, but you know, weddings, you're getting a little bit tedious, you know, and it's inevitable.
Obviously not the ones I've been playing at, because some of them can be quite interesting.
Oh no, they can be very interesting because it just turns out this guy, I know he gets plenty of offers when he's, you know, because he's quite a striking looking sort of bass player, which is I suppose a sort of contradiction in terms, but there we go. But you know, and he gets plenty of offers from older women. But it's that sort of thing. Going back to your thing about the drummer.
Yeah.
But yeah, weddings can be very interesting. But I always sort of thought about, you know, don't really be don't shoot me, I'm only the piano player type of thing. Some of these weddings, you can see they're going off.
I know exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's a bit like, well, just best for them to get on with it.
Yeah.
Don't include me. But anyway, I don't think it's any better anywhere, really, is it?
No, I mean, I understand where it's come from the tedious side. Is when you're playing weddings, it's the amount of time you just spend sitting around. You know, it's because obviously you have to get there so early, don't you? It's that's the hard work. It's yeah.
Yeah, that is, and I always remember somebody saying about, you know, musicians who end up drinking too much or whatever, because it's all the hanging around, you know.
It wouldn't be so bad if you don't have to drive.
No, I know. No, but this was in the days when it wasn't so much of a problem. You know, it's like the old jazzers, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's part of the fun, I guess. Isn't it? So with your teaching then, that's been obviously a bit of a mainstay with things for you, I'm assuming, isn't it?
Yes.
But so you do a lot of examining.
Yeah.
And obviously, how much are you doing with that now? Because it's
Well, the examining.
yeah, because I'm a little bit out of touch with all that now.
Yeah. I've just done quite a busy batch. I finished last week.
Right.
I've been doing it since, well, pretty much every week in June and July.
Right. Oh, that is a lot.
There's a lot of it. Yeah.
Is that because there are less examiners now, or there's just more exams?
It just seems to get bigger and bigger. I mean, it's.
Well, that's good.
I mean, and that's just the work that I've been able to do. You know.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any shortage of it.
No. Well, the numbers of examiners gone up.
I really wouldn't know that. I mean, I know. I mean, quite a lot of examiners I know that do turn it down. You know, but.
I think that might be that might be part of it, mightn't it? Because it's quite hard work, actually, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Because it doesn't. I mean, that's one of those sort of things when people are involved in playing, it looks like, oh, well, I could do a bit of examining, but it's actually like, well, actually, it's really quite hard work. Apart from anything else, that there's a sort of an energetic drain that goes on with examining, which is partly to do with the fact that everybody who walks through the door is nervous.
Yeah. They see you as the Grim Reaper.
Oh, of course they do. Well, I've actually thought, you know, maybe if you turn up with a hood and just had, you know, some sort of guitar case that looked more like a sickle.
Yeah.
That might
give me ideas now.
Yeah, it could be quite good, couldn't it? And just say, I just did a gig last night. You know, just sort of pass it off that it's part of your stage kit for the heavy metal band or the death metal band. But no, you're always that point of you're the person's worst nightmare at that point.
it's like I say, you probably feel a bit like a dentist does a lot of the time, but it's
Yeah, but not making as much money
not
as a
making as
dentist.
much money, unfortunately. No, no. I mean, I like examining again, and it's and obviously it's a respite from teaching, so it's a totally different thing. But when I first started that, I mean, again, a lot of thanks to yourself for advice and that. I just wanted to make people feel comfortable.
Yes.
Because when I did grades, I mean, I did some pretty miserable examiners.
Yeah, that was the main problem.
No, not the classical one.
Yeah.
And,
oh my God! Oh yeah, I had oh God. Don't get me started. Go on.
Yeah, so when I got the chance to do it, I went straight in with the mindset, not being a pushover or anything like that. If somebody hasn't done their work,
that's right. And it's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it's. But I always just think, let's try and make this enjoyable. And some people do enjoy the exams. It's a different mindset.
Yeah. And some people actually can come out thinking, well, I actually found that all right. Not oh, thank God that was over. And I think a lot of it is to do that because, again, you're not actually getting the best out of people if they feel really challenged by you.
Exactly.
What they've got to do is challenging enough without them having to be so nervous that they can't actually function. And I'm sure you can say lots of examples of people that, and it's often adults who are just literally in pieces.
Oh, that's the hardest,
and it is the adults. And we're back to that thing again. A lot of kids, although they're all nervous and all the rest of it, they can actually function. But often adults can't. And I remember reading an interesting thing once about what happens when your heart rate goes beyond a certain level and you effectively become dyslexic. And you can't actually see properly. So the mechanism of the body starts to go into
hibernation.
Well, it's like fight flight. So that means to say that the muscles that you need, or your core muscles, your arms, your running muscles, so legs, arms, and strangely enough, I came across this because obviously now I'm interested in all sorts of things, but I was particularly interested in how, it sounds completely random this, but there's a reason behind this, how they trained the British commandos in the Second World War to do hand-to-hand combat. And obviously the people who did the training really knew what they were doing, and a little bit like the sort of the people who set up things like the SAS and whatever, they had this sort of rather Heath Robinson sort of approach, which was based in something that they really understood. And what they realised was that it's no good teaching people subtle, clever, like martial arts things, because once you get anxious, you can't operate those muscles anymore. So they actually taught these combat things that they were taught to the commandos in the last 48 hours was literally like how to fight with muscles that were like running. Like you punched like this and you kicked as if you were running.
There's a backup thing.
So literally you could kill somebody like that, but you weren't trying to do anything clever. And I was like really fascinating because I'd experienced somebody coming for an exam, and it was somewhere like Malta. This guy couldn't plug his guitar in.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Shaking so much that he'd lost that subtle, because it's a subtle move, isn't it? If you think about finding the jack, And I thought, well, that perfectly explained that, and I had to allow this. Well, I had to sort of do some form of hypnosis on him to get him to, because obviously, sort of NLP stuff where you sort of get people to relax quickly, in order for him to function.
It's all part of the job.
It's part of the job, absolutely. It's not on the syllabus.
No, it's getting paid extra for that.
There should be. Really. But that really fascinated me. So. And again, if you get somebody who's on that level, everybody's heart rate's up anyway. Okay, not to the level that would happen, but you don't want that to happen.
No.
This is why I always say to people, the first thing you're going to play are a bunch of scales. So you really got to be able to do those in your sleep,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
because they've got to be the thing that you could do without having to think about it at all, right? You know, if you're thinking about it, if that's the first thing you're going to do, go out the window, because it's not in your fingers, right?
No.
But yeah.
I mean, nerves are obviously a big thing. Not, I mean, particularly exams, but I mean, people get stage fright, don't they? I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I always say this to all my students: you've got to be playing within your comfort zone.
Yes.
So you have got to be able to do it without thinking about
yes,
it.
Absolutely.
If you go in to do an exam or you've got to play a song with a difficult solo and you've only just nailed it, it's probably not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. Got to be well within your comfort
Yeah,
zone.
exactly. And that thing also, which is again going back to this sort of, it's weird that we got into the thing about the army, because but if you think about what people did in their training, right? If you're flying an airplane, right? You've got all these checks and stuff to do, right? What's all that about? Especially nowadays. I mean, this, you know,
it's done for you.
It's done for you, right? But it's actually to get you into the mindset.
Yeah, so it's the zone, isn't it?
It's the zone.
Yeah.
And people knew that.
Yeah.
What's the thing about marching up and down a bloody drill yard? Well, what's that about? You know, well, it's actually to get you in the zone.
Get you in the zone. Yeah.
And we've known this for all time. But suddenly, you know, you're talking to people now and it's like, oh my God, you know, well, have you ever played to anyone? Well, no. Played to mum and dad? No. Well, why not? What are you doing? You're playing the guitar. What are you playing the guitar to? Even putting something up on YouTube. You know, why not?
Yeah.
Because as soon as that light's on,
red light syndrome.
you know, you're on call, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know. So you've obviously, this is why you do well with examining, because I know that I'm sure there aren't that many examiners listening to this, but there are some examiners, I'm not going to name any names, who don't do that at all. And fortunately, they don't come here very rarely.
Very rarely.
In fact, once they've been here once and they've done that, they're not coming back again.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important point, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's, as you say, for some examination boards, that would be a lesson well learnt by them. But they don't.
No names.
No names.
Yeah.
But there aren't that many, so it's obvious who they would be.
Yeah.
But I think it's an important aspect, really. So, how do you see guitar playing going, generally?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting one. I don't think that much has really happened over the last 20 years, really, has it?
No.
You know, so, but I always thought with teaching that the older I got, I'd sort of maybe lose touch. But I mean, I still have youngsters wanting to learn the same stuff that I learned. That's, I mean, you have had some good bands come along, and obviously are good new bands, but I don't think the guitar has really changed that much, has it?
No. Which is interesting, isn't it?
I don't think it's...
Well, okay, you know, you've got obviously bands like Muse and people like that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But the problem with people like that is, you know, where do you start with the effects? You know, it's like even bands like U2, to be quite frank. I mean, how would you arrive at that by chance? Whereas obviously everything we did in the past, you could sort of sit down with the record and work it out.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like, well, how would you do that? You know.
Yeah, working that stuff out is not easy, because you say there's so much going on effects-wise, isn't there? And it's
well, even from a technique point of view, it's almost beyond the scope, technically, of somebody to start with. I mean, no, that's not to say that didn't happen before, because obviously there's jazz, right?
Yeah.
But I would say, I don't know.
You're talking about people getting into learning.
Yeah.
I mean, that was Oasis's big thing, wasn't it? I mean, when they come along, and people thought, oh, I can go.
Yeah, which just goes back to that again.
Same with the Sex Pistols. You know,
absolutely. Well, and Nirvana.
Yeah.
Actually.
And Nirvana's another one. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's always gone round those cycles. I mean, like when you had all the. I mean, when I started playing guitar, and there was people like Van Halen about. You know, it's quite. It was all that era, and it was quite scary. You know, it's. But when, you know, it sort of turns round, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You look at someone like that and you think, well, personally, I look at things and think, I want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know? But for a lot of people, they think that's too much. But playing one's wall in a band or
Yeah.
whatever. People do think I can do that, and it sets them up. So
Yeah, exactly.
I just think music's always gone round those.
Well, it
cycles.
has, and the interesting thing is, it always goes to that point of technical wizardry or whatever it is, you know, and then it goes almost flips around.
Yeah, yeah.
So obviously the jazz thing, you imagine if you were pre-rock and roll, what were you listening to? We were listening to people that were just so phenomenal. It was just like, well, how do you get into that? You know, and yeah, obviously people did and could, which meant they were obviously a certain type of people, or they had a community that was made that possible. So obviously, if you lived in New York or somewhere like that, and you knew a lot of jazz players, you could hang out with them and be able to learn to play, which is obviously
pick
what
those
people
things
do.
up, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So, but then once you get the reaction to that, you know, whether that's the skiffle thing or then the rock and roll thing, it's suddenly then it's, well, okay, this is now doable again. And again, that happens again. You look at all the sort of things that led up to, you know, in my the big movers and shakers in my time. We were saying Van Halen. I mean, for me, it was, you know, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and again, that's like, well, there's songs there. You'd sort of even now, you know, think well, if somebody suggested you were going to do Black Dog, you think, well, you could learn an entire set. You know, in the time of trying to get Black Dog right. So why would you do Black Dog unless somebody's going to pay you a lot of money for doing Black Dog? You know, so, but that apparently was always the case, that there were songs that were things that you wouldn't touch because they were too complicated. Not to say you wouldn't be able to do them, but the amount of work to put in to do them.
You've got to really want to do that.
Yeah. And I remember a guy telling me that about being in a band in the 60s, in the mid-60s, not the early 60s, in the mid-60s. And I said, so what was it like? You know, was the musicianship better? He said, no, it was different. He said, it was very different. He said, you could literally, there were only a handful of songs you wouldn't do because they were too difficult. You know, a couple of Beatles songs, the Homies, were just crazy. You wouldn't touch them. He said, but everything else, that was fine. He said, and I could tell you exactly when it changed, virtually to the day. He said, Purple Haze.
All right.
He said, that did it. Because then all the guitarists disappeared off, trying to work out what the hell was going on. He said, because suddenly you ended up with something that they didn't fit the bracket anymore.
Yeah.
So as soon as Hendrix appeared on the scene, he said, it wasn't Hey Joe, because that was like, this guy's quite good, but that was conceivable as what was going on. But as soon as he appeared and did that, and then everything else that followed, it was like, oh dear, the world had changed. And then obviously all the rest of the stuff that was bubbling along, you know, Pink Floyd and whatever, where it all started to become something other than what they knew.
Yeah.
And I think then you look at that and you go, well, yeah, that I think probably is the story of how these things go. And then technically it gets to that point, and for me, you know, you got all of that going on, and then punk appeared, and that turned everything upside down. It was almost like there was then a reaction to the people who could play.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, well, you don't want to do that, because why would you want to do that? You know. But I was still sort of like trying to work out what Rory Gallagher was doing, right, or Roy Buchanan or whatever, or Jeff Beck, while the punk thing was going on. But I think that's what happens, and then you see that. And maybe this is what will happen with technology. I'm guessing that it's going to get to such a point that you can't do anything without the gear. You know, can you use this software to do whatever it is? And they'll be like, oh, come on. Somebody's got an old guitar, you know. Let's do that song by whoever, you know, Neil Young. My dad's got this song by the band, you know, Neil Young. I don't know who's Neil Young, right? And then it starts all over again. I don't know. It's something like that.
Yeah, I mean, acoustic guitar is quite popular at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and it has been for quite some time, actually, hasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly has, yeah. I mean, I'd certainly say lessons are probably, well, for me at least 50-50. You know,
Right.
By far, the acoustic exams
Yes.
are massive, you know.
Yes.
Certainly massive. And I mean, but yeah, technology takes the fun out of it a bit, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but there again, you could say, electric guitar's technology, couldn't you?
Well, it is technology. Yeah, it's also a technology that hasn't really changed that much.
No, no, but that's the thing. It's like, well, it's when I think what happens is you get a reaction to some extent. The reaction is against the electric guitar with the acoustic guitar. If you see what I'm getting at. It's like, well, we're back to something basic because we can do this. I mean, we don't need the amp and we don't need the rest of it. And maybe that is a reaction to the electric guitar.
Yeah, I think it probably is. Yeah,
certainly to the sort of shredding.
Can shred on acoustics.
Yeah, I know you can. And of course, obviously, when you look at some of the old jazz players, that's exactly what they were doing. So, even with fingerboard tapping, goodness, that's what else. I can't remember the guitarist's name, but back in the 1950s,
Yeah, I mean, I think what people automatically assume acoustic guitars and as songs, and sit around a campfire and strum blowing in the wind or whatever. It's knocking on heaven's door. But obviously that you've only got to look at Segovia, it's still acoustic guitar, isn't it? So it can be anything you want.
Absolutely. Or all those flamenco players like what's his name, Manitas de Plata and whatever. Yeah. Pacapania. Yeah. But it's that sort of thing of looking at. I mean, the guitars. What fascinates me about the guitar is it's just everything you can imagine, isn't it? Musically, it's just totally extraordinary. It's in so many different styles of music. It's unbelievably adaptable, yet basically so simple.
Yeah.
And it's just like one of those sort of instruments you think, it's a masterpiece, really, because it's simple.
Yeah, simple idea. Yeah.
Simple idea.
You can do everything with it.
And it could do everything. It's amazing.
I think it's how expressive it is as well. I mean,
There's
not many instruments you can be that. I'm not saying it's better than pianos or
no,
but it's
I could say that.
Yeah, you can.
No, seriously. I think no, but I think what it is, and somebody actually said this to me. When you play a piano, there's something between you and the string.
When you play guitar.
No, when you're playing piano.
Yeah, right.
There's a this and then there's a hammer and
I was saying,
okay, great concert pianists. It's all touch sensitive and all the rest. Yes, I know that, but it's still not the finger on the string.
No,
Right.
Well, that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. And whether that's finger picking or literally the finger on the string. That creates the vibrato and all the rest of it. That's the point about it. That there is something intrinsically tactile and intimate about the guitar.
It's connection.
Yeah. That's true with the violin.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a bow, but if you look at the electric guitar, there's a plectrum, and obviously the earliest forms of guitar, the oud and whatever, the Arabic instruments, they all use plectrums of.
Yeah, mandolin players.
Yeah. But there is something about having at least one finger, at least one hand dealing directly with the sound that makes that happen somehow. I don't know what that is, but is that sort of, there's a mystery to the guitar which I think makes it such an extraordinary instrument. And maybe because its roots are Arabic, not Western.
Yeah.
There is something because there is something about that with Arabic music, that the instrument is something very, it's like Arabic flute music and stuff. It's like extraordinary. And it has its roots in all sorts of stuff. Indian music and whatever. Whereas, so it has that more tactile thing. Whereas if you think about Western music, like classical music, it's very, very sort of heady. Isn't it? It's all very intellectual and very logical and whatever. Whereas there's something not logical about whatever the guitar's involved in. There's something not logical about it. If you see what I mean. I don't know. It's a bit of a wonder, really, isn't it?
Yes, it's again. I think that's probably its main draw, really. I mean, that and the fact you can, as you say, do any style of music, apart from maybe electronica. There's not many things you can't do with it, is there? But And I think with the rock guitar, I mean, obviously the roots of that go back to the blues, don't they? It's that.
Well, and yeah, probably even earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
string bending and things like that. People were drawn to it's a motive, isn't it?
Yes.
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 I mean, you can be a motive if you play Schindler's List on the piano. The notes are a motive, but it's that just that connect. You can actually hear the soul. Can't
Well,
you?
I've actually done, because I after I had this health event at the beginning of the year, because I had to get out and do a lot of walking, I started thinking, wow, you know, I'm going to have to do something that's something to do with, you know, work, if you like. So I started doing these things called Today's Office. So it was a bit like I'd be walking wherever, and I'd have a camera and just talk about something. And I actually got to this sort of point where, because obviously you can only be sort of philosophical about what's going on with music. And I've now got to the point where I'm looking at sort of folk traditions with music. And the fact is, as soon as you get to the sort of folk tradition with music, it doesn't take very long where it gets really weird, right? So, you're talking about blues. I mean, and this is the thing that always cracks me up with blues being taught in a classroom environment. And you sort of think, well, that's not...
No, you do that.
Well, it's not really blues, is it?
No.
It's like, you sort of go, right, well, all that stuff, you know, 12 part, well, it's not really, it can be anything.
It can be anything, yeah.
And it, you know, it's not 3 chords, it can be 1 chord, it can be as many chords as you want. And so what is blues then? And it's like, well, actually, then it starts to get very weird, because when you look at that, it goes into then the weird sort of folk traditions about whatever it is that these people are doing with the music, you know, what's it being used for? And you start to realise that then most musical styles were there almost sort of ritualistically to try and answer a question about something, or you know, create some sort of control or power over something. You know, blues is most definitely that, isn't it? You know, mojo bags and, you know, whatever it is. But it's all in, you know, flamenco. You know, the dance of the spider. I mean, what's that about? I mean, you know, tarantella. And I was doing a lot of stuff about that, because, as you say, that emotive thing, I think, comes from a sense of when you play it well, you're locking into something that has got some tradition.
Yeah. Which
is weird, because you're sort of saying, well, you know, originally, of course, when you think of blues, you think of, you know, black blues musicians. But of course, the blues, the root of a lot of those blues songs is actually much older than that, and is back in London, weirdly, because a lot of those early blues songs were London street songs that found their way over to America and then were picked up.
And folk songs.
Yeah, like St James Infirmary.
Oh yeah.
So where's St James Infirmary? Well, it's in London. Right. So what's that about?
So the Infirmary Blues.
Yeah. So we've got songs that have travelled with people that were escaping some nastiness and ended up in another place where they probably exacted their nastiness on the poor slave people, you know, and then taught them the songs at the same time. And you go, oh my God. And the chords, because where did the chord sequences come from? Well, they come from over here. They didn't come from, you know, Guyana or you know, East Africa or anything like that. They didn't have any chords. So when you look at that, it's a real sort of melting pot. And that's what I find fascinating about music, that it can have that potency, that it can literally travel from one side of the Atlantic to the other and keep its potency, pass it to a completely different group of people. That's not to say that all the people that ended up from here to there ended up as slave owners. No, I'm not saying that. Yeah. But it ended up that could travel into another, you know, style of music, if you like, for want of a better word, and then be found again by the, you know, white 1960s English people.
Yeah.
And then actually have the same potency again here. Which I find astonishing.
Talking of Stones.
Stones,
like that,
the Animals, you know.
Yardbirds. From John Mayer.
Yeah. I mean, they were playing it in a way that was authentic enough
it was
for people like B.B. King to say, look, you guys rescued me and the rest of us because you were doing it as well as, you know.
Yeah, so as you were saying, if it started in London or...
Yeah, well, you know, I'm just using London as one example, but...
It's travelling.
It's travelling,
isn't it?
yeah. So that it's almost like the actual style of music is on a mission, weirdly, that it can then find its way somewhere else and still be as relevant, because that doesn't generally happen.
No, I mean, that's another thing people do, in it. They put old Spanish music or Brazilian music. It's just music, isn't it?
Yeah. But the interesting thing is the essence of it. That's the bit that I find fascinating. It's not actually the song necessarily. Could be, but often not. It's something about the essence of what that music is. That's what was fascinating to me about, you know, the folk tradition, where the music is embedded in. There is something in there that's sort of vibrant, that isn't actually the music. Okay, you could call it like the spirit of the music, if you like, or the spirit of the tradition, that can find its way and move around. You know, like flamenco. I mean, you know, flamenco has travelled.
Yeah.
And I mean, it effectively travelled because it ended up in South America becoming other things.
Yeah.
You know, because the guitar travelled with the Spanish, and ended up being, you know, Latin American.
Yeah. Well, you end up with all these fusions of things.
Yeah.
So,
well, Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the musical styles in Africa. I mean, they're astonishing, and they all include guitar, whether it's township music or high life or whatever.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, there is something to why I think different music sounds different from different countries. Your overall lifestyle, you know, if you live on the Mediterranean, you just
totally
just going to feel nice. I mean,
it's going to be a completely different vibe.
Yeah, a completely different vibe to, you know, living in Iceland or something. Where things are darker and that. It's it does, but it's still the human soul, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. That, I think you hit the nail on the head, because I try not to, but now you've said that, I think that is the point. It's that. Well, in fact, the interview I did with Andreas Cornwell, which I think you actually heard, you know, because he tells myths, you know, in that sort of northern, you know, Icelandic and northern European tradition. He was saying about this idea, you know, the Greeks had it sort of nailed with this sort of idea that there was the mythos, you know, and the logos. So you had the logic and the myth, and they both had to exist, but they weren't interchangeable. But you knew whether you were talking mythically or whether you were talking logically. But of course, we've sort of gone, oh, that works really well, and taken the logic and then dumped the myth. Right? That's our scientific thing. But of course, you can't have one without the other, because the unknowable is unknowable. So it's that sort of thing when you're dealing with things like art, when you sort of you know, you're trying to explain about why you've got to go into that sort of thing of, well, it's a feeling. You know, it's that sort of thing of, you know, what are you expressing here? I don't know. You know, playing a scale. I mean, you wouldn't get very far, would you?
No, not really, no.
But of course, you can't put the mythos into the college syllabus, can you? Yeah, we're all going to turn up and just like, okay, we'll see what happens. You know, but give us your 10 grand or whatever it is. See what I mean? And
freeform,
we're doing freeform. How do you do that? So we're going to be doing some, you know, some Sun Ra. So where do we start? Right, okay. Well, don't worry about the scales. Just imagine you all come from the planet Zog. I don't know where did you think? I don't know. That you come from some other galaxy or something. It's like, okay. But I mean, you can see that when you're pushing art to that level, it just becomes, from a logical point of view, dysfunctional. It's like, you know. But you can see it even early on, as you're saying, when people are playing. Some people, like you're saying with the exams, some people sit down and play and you think, this guy's good. But you might only be doing grade 3. But there's something about what they do. And you go like, how do you...
What's the X factor? Not the folk.
No, but it is, It is that. That's exactly right. It's that other bit that's the mythos factor.
Yeah,
It's
but that is the mythos.
yeah, it is. It is. It's that sort of thing that
You can't
no,
explain it.
it's unknowable.
Mm.
That's right. But we've got to leave that available, haven't we?
Well, yeah, but that even goes back to what you were saying earlier about the way things are taught nowadays. And things like that aren't taken
No, they're not.
because people don't understand it.
No, because again, that's the way that education has taken us to that point. Because everything has to be written down in a lesson plan.
Yeah,
I mean, that, to be quite frank, and I've known some really great teachers who are from an older generation, the idea of having a lesson plan, it's totally ridiculous. It's like, well, how do you know? You might have this idea in the back of your head that we're doing this and that, but when they walk through the door,
Oh yeah, it just goes off in tangents, doesn't
yeah,
it?
and this is classroom teaching. This is not even...
it's not even
So the
one-to-one,
idea to have a lesson plan is the most ridiculous thing, actually. But the idea is it's because we're not actually, they're not employing teachers, they're employing people who are going to teach something,
Yeah.
which is not the same thing.
No, it's not the same thing at all.
No. And that's, I think, maybe, could be true of lots of things like that, like examining. You can employ a lot of people to examine, but they might not be examiners.
No, very true.
It's just thought.
Yeah.
That's it's just, I'm idling thought. But you know what I mean? Because it might be that there's the same skills involved as teaching.
Yeah, I suppose everybody does things slightly different, don't they? I suppose
Well,
that's
but
part of
it's
it.
their idea that when you everybody needs to be doing things the same way. Well, we can't,
No,
because everybody sees things differently, don't they?
Well, as you once said before, one of those conferences, you're trying to make creative people go against their grain.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's life, isn't it? It's,
Well, it is, and again, it's like so. With putting people in for exams is always a bit like my attitude is always that the examination date is the journey's end.
journey's end. Yeah.
So it's actually not the journey's end that you're interested in. It's the journey. It's it's the prep and everything.
Mm.
So if they turned up or were ill and they couldn't do that exam, it doesn't matter. They've done the work.
They've still done the work.
Yeah. But it's a difficult concept for people to grasp nowadays.
Yeah, it is. I mean, what you're talking about is it's the same thing. It's all about that bit of paper, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's what we're geared for nowadays. But it's the learning and everything you've done. And I think it's when you look back. I mean, I just had one of my students do a grade 8. I've been teaching him for years, and he did struggle with it. And he passed it quite fairly comfortably. You had to work hard. But then, I think it was yesterday, I gave him a lesson, and he was just playing things for fun. And I said to him, you would never been able to play with something like that
No.
years ago. And all of a sudden, it's dawned on him thinking, oh yeah, I can do all these things now.
Absolutely.
Because you're always pushing yourself, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Grace?
Yeah.
But then
That's
you
the point.
sit back on it and you think,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's again, it's a bit like your comfort zone thing that you're saying.
Yeah.
To get a comfort zone that gives you all that stuff, you've got to be pushing it out into uncomfortable areas.
Yeah. It's the only way to get better, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yeah. Well, it's the same way as it's the same concept as building muscle. You've got that extreme bit. You don't want to be pushing that because you'll go pop type of thing. But there's that zone that's outside of what's comfortable,
Yeah.
and you need to be in there in order to increase that bit,
Yeah.
which in turn increases the extremity of what you can
Mhm.
do. And once you understand that concept, it's the same for everything. It's the same for music. So technically, once you've got that little bit of that, it doesn't have to be the entire solo, does it? It could be that bit there that's really interesting and technically it's really demanding, blah blah blah, and then that pushes that out.
Okay. Yeah. I find something I often analogise sport with music.
Yes.
From a technical level.
Yes, absolutely, totally agree.
How you build things up over a gradual period of time,
Yep.
and you push the comfort zone down again, and obviously it's like a footballer that does extra running. It's like a lead guitarist just doing that extra bit of scale practice.
Absolutely.
It just gives you that edge.
Yeah, the other analogy I often say to people is like, if you want to be a great rower, you're going to spend a lot of time in the gym, nowhere near any water.
Yeah.
because you need actually to build those muscles in that way, so that when you get on a boat, right, because you won't be able to build those muscles on the boat in that particular way, but you can do it there. So again, it's like scale practice when you're, because really you don't want to be just playing a load of scales when you're playing lead guitar, because we've already bored.
Yeah.
But you need that technical thing to build up that in order to do this. Yeah, no, well, I was sort of joking, but I'm serious actually. But you don't really want to do that.
No. Well, it's like I say, it goes back to the football or running. It's going to help him on the pitch, but he still wants to play football.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I know scales are maligned, but it's a conditioning of your fingers, isn't it? So that when you are improvising, that mechanics is already taken care of.
Yes, exactly.
So that extra bit of work you've done, it does pay off.
Oh, totally. I totally agree. Well, that was really good. We've it's an hour.
Blimey. we could go on.
Yeah, I know, but that's the whole point of this. Right. We can just talk about whatever we want.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the time when I realise that we haven't mentioned anything about music at all. But we have actually done that.
We touched on it.
We've touched on it today, so that was a good marker. So anyway, thanks, Barry. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, have you got a website?
I do have a website, yeah.
Okay. If you can remember what it is.
I can't at the moment.
Well, I'll have to put it in the show notes anyway.
Yeah, do that bit. Yeah,
right.
I don't,
that's right, you're as good as me with technology.
I mean, I've got one, but somebody does it for me.
Yes, I know. Yeah, well, I've got one site that somebody does for me, and another one that's absolutely rubbish that I do myself. But yeah. So anyway, well, it's really good to speak to you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. And so we'll catch up again.